Welcome to my HTML programming course. In this video, we will see about HTML forms. Let's get started. Let's start with the introduction. HTML forms are used to collect the user input. For example, during online registration, we will be entering details such as name, address, age, email address, password, and phone number, etc. These are all form data. This user input will be sent to the server for processing. We have various form elements and we will see that in detail. Next, we will see about the syntax of HTML forms. The form element is used to create an HTML form to collect the user input. The form element is the container for different types of input elements such as text fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, etc. Here we have two attributes. One is action, which defines the server URL. Another one is method, which defines the HTTP method.
For demo, I am using simple form HTML file. Here, we have given title as simple form. Inside the body tag, I have defined paragraph element as forms in HTML. To create forms in HTML, let's type form tag. Inside the form tag, I am adding label tag and I am giving content as first name. Let's add one more label for last name. I am adding line break element at the end to insert the elements in the next line. Let's add input tag. Let's type the attribute type equal to text. Let's add one more input tag with type equal to text. See how it is displayed in the browser. For the first label tag, let's add the attribute for with the value first name. And for the second label tag, let's add the attribute for with the value last name. For the first input tag, let's add ID attribute with the value first name and the name attribute with the value first name. For the second input element, let's add ID attribute with the value last name and the name attribute with the value last name. Let's add one more input element for form submission. For submit, I am giving type attribute with the value submit. See, the submit button is added to the form. To change the submit button text, I am giving value attribute with the value submit. See, this is updated for the submit element. We can give Peter for the first name and for last name I am giving Maxton. This is how we have to create simple form in HTML.
The main HTML form element contains one or more elements, and those elements are input, label, select, text area, button, field set, legend, data list, output, option, and opt group. We will see about all form elements in detail. Let's start with the input element. The input element is the most commonly used form element. Based on the type attribute, the input element will be displayed in different ways. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I'm using form element input HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form element input. Inside the body tag, I have created paragraph element with the content input form element. Now we will add input form element. So let's type form tag. Inside form tag, I'm giving input tag and I'm adding type attribute with the value text. See, the input element is added in the form. Let's add ID attribute with the value first name and the name attribute with the value first name. This is how we have to add input element in form.
Next, we will see about label element. We can use label element to define labels for various form elements. It is useful for the users who are having difficulty for clicking on very small regions. For example, in case of radio buttons or checkboxes. This is because when the user clicks the text within the label element, it will toggle the radio button or the checkbox. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am using form element label HTML file. Here, I have defined the title as form element label. Inside the body tag, I have created paragraph element with the content label form element. To add label element, let's add form tag. Inside the form tag, I am typing label tag. I am giving label content as first name. Let's add for attribute with the value first name. See, the label is added in the form. This is how we have to create label element in HTML.
Next, we will see about select element. The select element is used to define the drop-down list. The option tag is used to define the options that can be selected. For the select element, by default, the first item in the drop-down is selected. For select element, we have some attributes. Let's see one by one. We can use selected attribute to define a pre-selected option. Next is the size attribute. We can use size attribute to specify the number of visible values. Next one is the multiple attribute. We can use multiple attribute to allow the user to select more than one values. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am using form element select HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form element select. First we will create select form element. Before that, let's add table element. The content is choose a color. This is the label created for selecting colors. So for that, I am adding for attribute with the value colors. Let's add select tag. Inside the select tag, we have to add options using option tag. For the first option, I am giving green. Let's copy and paste the option tags 4 more times to add 4 more options. Let's change the content to red, pink, yellow, and then orange. We have defined options for colors. So let's add ID attribute with the value colors and the name attribute with the value colors. In the web browser, see how the select element displays with color options. In the drop-down, you can see all the options. While selecting a particular option, a corresponding value to be sent to the server for processing. To provide that value, we have to use value attribute. For green color, I am giving value as green for value attribute, and for red color, I am giving value as red for value attribute. For pink, I am giving value as pink, and for yellow, I am giving yellow, and for orange, I am giving value as orange for value attribute. This is how we have to create select element. When you select a particular option, the corresponding value will be sent to the server for processing. Next, we will see what is the use of selected attribute. For demo, I am copy pasting the same code we have written before. Let's save the file. By default, the first option content is getting displayed in the select element. Here it is green. Just imagine we have to display pink color as a default option. For that, we have to add selected attribute to the option tag. Let's save the file. Now the pink color is getting displayed as the default option. This is the use of selected attribute. Next, we will see about the size attribute. For demo, let's copy paste the same code for the select element. To the select tag, I am giving size with the value 3. See, in the selected element, 3 options will be getting displayed. This is the use of size attribute. Next, we will see about multiple attribute. For demo, let's copy paste the same code for the select element. Now, to the select tag, let's add multiple attribute. See the output in the web browser. This is how we have to create select form element. Next, we will see about text area element. The text area element is used to define the multi-line input field, which is a text area. For text area, we have two attributes. One is rows, another one is column. Row attribute is used to define the visible number of lines in the text area. Column attribute is used to define the visible width of the text area. Let's see this in action. For code demo, I am using the HTML file form element text area. Here I have given the title as form element text area. Inside the body tag, I have defined the paragraph element with the content text area form element. Let's type form tag. To create text area element inside form tag, let's add text area tag. In between the opening and closing tags, I am adding content as hi. This is the text area element. See how the text area element displays in the browser. Since this text area element is created for displaying messages, let's add name attribute with the value message and the ID attribute with the value message. We can also adjust the size of the text area element by using rows and column attributes. For rows, I am giving value as 10. See how the height of the text area element is changed. And for columns, I am giving value as 30. Now the width of the text area element is changed accordingly. Next, we will see about button element. The button element is used to define the clickable button. Let's see this in action. For code demo, I'm using the HTML file form element button. Here I have given the title as form element button. Inside the body tag, I have defined the paragraph element with the content button form element. To add button element, let's create form tag. Inside the form tag, let's add button tag. I'm typing click me as the button content. Let's add type attribute and provide the value as button since this is a simple button. Let's add on click with alert. I'm giving alert messages. I pressed the button. Let's save the file and see how it works. When I click on this click me button, I could see the alert with the message I pressed the button. This is how we have to create button in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about field set and legend elements. The field set element is used to group the related data in a form, and the legend element is used to define caption for the field set element. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using this HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form element, field set and legend. Inside the body tag, I have defined the paragraph element with the content, field set and form legend element. Let's add form tag. In between the tags, let's type field set tag to create the field set element. I'm copy pasting the same field set tag once again to add one more field set element. See, the two field set elements are created. Inside the field test tag, let's type legend tag to define the title of the field set element. Here I am giving employee 1. For the second field set tag, I am giving employee 2. So inside this field set elements, we can add employee details by using other form elements.
Next, we will see about data list element. The data list element is used to list the predefined options for an input element so that users can see the list of predefined options in the dropdown as the input data. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using form element data list HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form element data list. Inside the body tag, I have defined the paragraph element with the content data list form element. To add data list element, let's add form tag. Inside the form tag, before creating the data list element, let's create input element. Since we are going to create a list of colors, let's add the attribute name with the value colors. Now let's add data list tag. To the data list tag, I'm adding ID attribute with the value colors. Inside the data list tag, let's add options using option tag. In the option tag, we need to define color using the value attribute. For the first option tag, I'm giving value as red, and for the second option tag, I'm giving value as blue. Let's copy and paste the option tag. Let's change the value to pink, pink yellow, and then orange. See the output in the browser. Initially, you could see the options available. When you start typing RE, you could see the red option. This is how we have to create data list element in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about output element. The output element is used to show the result of a calculation. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using the HTML file form element output. Here I have defined the title as form element output. Inside the body tag, I have defined paragraph element with the content output form element. To create output element, let's add form tag. Before creating output element, let's add input tag. For type attribute, I am giving value as number. Since this is the input created for providing first value for the calculation, I am giving ID attribute with the value first name and the name attribute with the value first value. See, the input field is created. Let's add one more input element to provide the second value for the calculation. Here for the type attribute, we are giving number. And for the ID attribute, I am giving value as second value. And for the name attribute, I am giving value as second value. Now the second input field is also created. For the first input field, I am giving value as 50. And for the second input field, I am giving value as 9. See, the values are updated in the input field for both first value and second value. Now let's add the output field using output tag. I am adding output tag. Since this is for displaying result, let's add name attribute with the value result. And for attribute, I am giving A, B. Since these are the two input values. Now we will add the result calculation. For on input, let's give result dot value equal to parse int first value dot value plus parse int second value dot value. Now we are displaying result by adding two input values. So in the browser, when I am trying to increment the first value, we could see the corresponding output in the output field. This is how we have to create output element in HTML forms.
Till now we have seen different types of input elements. Now we will see the different attributes of form elements. Let's start with the action attribute. The action attribute is used to define the action to be performed when the form is submitted. Usually, the form data will be sent to a file on the server when a user clicks on the submit button. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using form attribute HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form attribute action. I also added one paragraph element and I have added the same form we have created before. Here we have two labels, one for first name and another for last name. And we have two input fields for the first name and last name. We also have submit button in the end. Now we will add action attribute with the value action underscore page dot php. Let's save the file. So once you click submit, the input form data will be sent to this page for processing.
Next we will see about target attribute. The target attribute is used to specify where to display the response which is getting received after submitting the form. We have different values for target attribute. First one is blank. For blank, the response will be displayed in a new window or a new tab. The default value is self. And for self, the response will be displayed in the current window. And for parent, the response will be displayed in the parent frame. And for top, the response will be displayed in the full body of the window. If we give some custom file name, the response will be displayed in the mentioned iframe. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using the form attribute target HTML file. Here I have defined the title as form attribute target. Here I have copy pasted the same code we have written before. This is the form with first name, last name and submit button. Let's add target attribute with the value blank. So once you click submit, the response will be displayed in the new window or the browser tab. This is how we have to use target attribute in HTML forms.
Next we will see about method attribute. The method attribute is used to define the HTTP method to be used when submitting the form data. For get method, the form data will be sent as URL variables. And for post method, the form data will be sent as HTTP post transaction. The default HTTP method is get. Now we will see some important notes on get method. For get method, the form data will be appended to the URL by means of name value pairs. We should not use get method to send sensitive data because the submitted form data will be visible in the URL. The length of the URL is limited to 2048 characters. The get method is used to do form submissions where a user wants to bookmark the result. And on the whole, the get method is good for non-secure data like query strings in Google. For post method, the form data will be appended inside the body of the HTTP request, and the submitted form data will not be visible in the URL. The post method has no size limitation so that it can be used to send large amount of data. We should not bookmark the result for the form submissions with post method. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using the HTML file form attribute method. Here I have defined the title as form attribute method. I have created two forms, one for get method and another one for post method. For the first form, let's add get method. So to the form tag, I am typing method attribute and I am giving value as get. So when you click on the submit button, the get method will be processed. And for the second form, I am adding method attribute with the value as post. So when you click on the submit button, the post method will be processed. This is how we have to use method attributes in HTML forms.
Next we will see about autocomplete attribute. The autocomplete attribute is used to specify whether a form is having autocomplete on or off. When autocomplete is on, the browser automatically complete values based on the values that the user has entered before. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using the HTML file form attribute autocomplete. Here I have defined the title as form attribute autocomplete. Let's use the same form we have created before. To the form tag, let's type autocomplete attribute. And I'm giving value as on. For the first name, I'm giving John Peter and click submit. Now refresh the browser. Then try to add Peter. Now the browser is suggesting John Peter, which we have entered before. So we can use this browser suggestion. Now let's give the value of for autocomplete. Now in the browser, I am doing the same. Now the browser is not suggesting the previously entered value. This is the use of autocomplete attribute in HTML forms.
The last one is no validate attribute. The no validate attribute is a Boolean attribute. If no validate attribute is present, the input form data should not be validated when submitted. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using the HTML file form attribute no validate. Here I have defined the title as form attribute no validate. Here I am using the same form. To the form tag, let's add no validate attribute. When you click submit, the input details will not be validated. This is the use of no validate attribute.
In HTML forms, we have different input types. These are all the input types. Let's see about each type in detail. Let's start with text input type. The input type text is used to define the single line text input field. Let's see this in action.
For coding demo, I am using the HTML file input types text. Here I have defined the title as input type text. Let's add form tag. Before adding input text element, let's add label tag with the content first name. Let's create one more label for last name. Since the first label element is defined for first name, we are giving for attribute with the value first name. Since the second label element is defined for last name, I am giving for attribute with the value last name. Now let's add input element. Now I am typing input tag and I am giving type attribute with the value text. In the browser, I am typing text as Spider Tech Hub. This is the input element for getting first name. I am giving ID attribute with the value as first name and the name attribute with the value first name. Let's add input element for getting last name. I am typing input tag with type equal text and ID equal to last name and name equal to last name. This is how we have to create text input element in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about password input type. The input type password is used to define the password field. For password field, all the characters are masked. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am using this HTML file. Here I have defined the title as input type password. To add password field, first let's add form tag. Inside form tags, before adding password input field, I am creating label field with the content name. Let's add break element at the end. This is the label created for name. So let's add for attribute with the value name. Let's add one more label for password field. So I'm adding for attribute with the value password. For name, I'm creating input field with the type text. Let's add ID attribute with the value name and name attribute with the value name. For the name input field, we can enter some name, which is the text. I am giving Spider Tech Hub. Let's create input field with the type password. Since this is for password, I am adding ID attribute with the value password and the name attribute with the value password. Let's save the file. In the browser, I am entering the same name, Spider Tech Hub for name field. When I try to enter text in the password field, see the characters are getting masked. It is not visible to the user. This is how we have to create password field in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about submit input type. The input type submit defines the button for submitting the form data to a form handler. The form handler is typically a server page with a script for processing the input data. The form handler will be specified using the action attribute. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using this HTML file. Here I have defined the title as input type submit. I am using the same form we have created before with the name and password fields. Now I am going to add submit button at the end. Let's type input tag. Here for the type attribute, I am giving value as submit. And I am creating value attribute with the value submit. So after entering the name and password, we can click submit to send the input data to the server for processing.
Next, we will see about reset input type. The input type reset is used to define the reset button that will reset all the form values to their default values. If you change the input values and then click the reset button, the form data will be reset to the default values. Let's see this in action.
I am using input type reset HTML file for code demo. Here I have defined the title as input type reset. I am using the same form we have created before. After the submit button, let's add reset input field. Let's type input tag. I am giving value as reset for type attribute. Let's save the file, and now you could see the reset field is added in the form. So I'm giving some random name and password, and when you click reset, the input field values are resetted to the default values. This is how you have to create reset field in the HTML form.
Next, we will see about radio input type. The radio input type is used to define the radio button. These radio buttons will allow the user to select only one of a limited number of choices. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, I have defined title as input types radio. Let's add form tag. Inside the form tag, I'm creating input field using input tag with the type attribute value as radio. The radio buttons I'm going to create for selecting colors. So I'm giving value color for the name attribute. Let's add label tag with the content red. Now the first one is defined for red color. So I'm giving ID equal to red, value equal to red. And also add for attribute to the label with the value red. Let's add one more input field, and I'm defining this for blue color. So let's type name equal to color, ID equal to blue, and value equal to blue. Let's add label tag and the content is blue. And for attribute, let's give blue. Let's add one more input field for pink color. So to the input tag, let's give type equal to radio, ID equal to pink and name equal to color and value equal to pink. I'm adding label tag with the content pink. And for attribute, I'm giving pink as the value. Let's save the file. Here we can select any one color as the input.
Next, we will see about checkbox input type. The checkbox input type is used to define the checkbox. The checkbox will allow the user to select 0 or more number of options of a limited number of choices. Let's see this in action.
Let's create checkbox input field. So first add form tag. Creating checkbox type input field is quite similar to radio type input field. So in the input tag, let's add type attribute with the value checkbox. The checkbox input field I am going to create for selecting colors. So I am giving name attribute with the value color. The first input field is for red color. So I am giving ID equal to red and value equal to red. Let's create label tag with the content red. And for attribute, I am giving value as red. Let's create one more checkbox input field for blue color. Here I am giving name equal to color, ID equal to blue and value equal to blue. I am creating label tag and the content is blue. Let's add for attribute with the value blue. Let's create the last checkbox input field for pink color. Let's give type equal to checkbox, name equal to color, ID equal to pink and value equal to pink. For the label tag, I am giving content as pink. And let's add for attribute with the value pink. Let's save the file. For the checkbox input type, we can select multiple options like this.
Next, we will see about button input type. The button input type is used to define the button. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, let's create button input field. Let's add form tag. Inside form tag, I am adding input tag. Let's add type attribute with the value button. I am giving value as click me. Let's save the file and see the click me button is added in the form. Let's add click event for the button using on click. I'm adding alert message with the value I pressed the button. Let's save the file. When I click this button, I could see the alert with the message I pressed the button.
Next, we will see about color input type. The color input type is used for the input fields that should contain a color. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, in the body tag, let's add form tag. Inside the form tag, I'm creating label element with the content. Select a favorite color. And I have given for attribute with the value favorite color. Let's add the input element. To the input tag, let's add type attribute with the value color and the ID attribute with the value favorite color and the name attribute with the value favorite color. Let's save the file. In the browser, you can select any color you want. This is how you have to create color input field in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about date input type. The date input type is used for the input fields that should contain a date. There are some attributes to add restriction to the dates, and those attributes are min and max. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, first let's create date input field. So add form tag. Inside the form tag, let's create a label element with the content. Select your birth date. This is the input created for selecting birth date. So I am creating for attribute with the value birth date. See, the label is added in the form. Now we will create input field with the type attribute value as date. I am giving ID equal to birth date and name equal to birth date. Let's save the file. See, the date input field is added in the form. Here you can select any date you want. Next we will see how to use min and max attributes. For demo, I am copy pasting the same code which we have created above. See, the input date field is added. Let's add min attribute. I am giving value as 2019 1 1, and for max attribute I am giving value as 2019 12 30. So the user will be able to select a date between the provided min and max values. See, after December 30 we can't select anything. Similarly, before January 1st of 2019 we couldn't select any date. This is the use of min and max attributes. This is how we have to create date input field in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about date time local input type. The date time local input field is used to specify a date and time input field with no time zone. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I am using this HTML file. Let's use the same code we have created before. I am copy pasting the same code here. Here, for the type attribute, I am changing value as date time local instead of date. Save the file and see how it displays in the web browser. Here, user can select any date along with time. This is how we have to create datetime local input field in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about email input type. The email input type is used for the input fields that should contain an email address. Depending on the browser support, the email address will be automatically validated when submitted. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, I'm going to create email type input field. For that, first I have added form tag. Inside the form tag, I'm adding label with the content, enter your email address. Since this is for getting email address from the user, I'm giving for attribute with the value email. Next, I'm creating input field with the input tag. And for type attribute, I'm giving email. And for ID attribute, I'm giving value as email. And for name attribute, again email. Save the file and see how it displays in the browser.
Next, we will see about image input type. The image input type is used to define the image as the submit button. The path of the image will be mentioned in the source attribute. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I'm using the HTML file input types image. Here I'm going to use the image stored in the images folder. Here I have submit button image. Now we will create image input field. Let's go back to the same HTML file. In the body tag, let's add form tag. Inside form tag, I'm adding label tag with the content, first name. To the label tag, let's add for attribute with the value first name. Now I'm typing input tag with the type text and ID as first name and also name as first name. Let's do the same for last name. So I'm typing label tag and for equal to last name and the content is last name. And for input tag, I'm typing type equal to text and ID equal to last name and name equal to last name. And I'm adding break element at the end. Now we will create image input field. To the input tag, for type attribute, I'm giving value as image. And also, we will add source attribute to provide the image path. For source attribute, I'm typing images folder and then submit button image. And also, I'm giving alternate attribute with the value submit. In addition to this, I'm giving width of the image is 100 and the height of the image is 50. See, the button is added in the form. I'm typing spider for first name and tech hub for last name, and then we can click on this image to send the details to the server.
Next, we will see about file input type. The file input type is used to define the file select and a browse button for the file uploads. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, I'm using this HTML file and inside body tag, let's add form tag. Inside form tag, let's add the label tag with the content, select the input file. Since this is for providing my file, I am creating for attribute with the value my file. Let's add input tag and add the type attribute. Provide the value as file for type attribute. Let's give id equal to my file, name equal to my file. See the file input field in the browser.
Next, we will see about hidden input type. The hidden input type is used to define the hidden input field. That means which is not visible to the user. A hidden field makes the web developers to include data that cannot be seen or modified by the users when the form is submitted. Let's see this in action.
Let's create hidden input type. So let's add form tag, and inside the form tag, let's create label element with the content name. To this label tag, let's add for attribute with the value name. Let's create an input field with type equal to text. Let's give id equal to name and name equal to name. Let's add one more input field. Here I am giving type attribute with the value hidden. Let's give id attribute with the value id and the name attribute with the value id. And I am giving value as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's save the file. In the browser, the name input field is getting displayed and we couldn't see the hidden input field. Let's add one more input field to see this clearly. Let's add input tag. To the input tag, I'm adding type attribute with the value submit and the value as submit. Let's save the file. In the browser, you can clearly see that ID input field is hidden in between the name field and the submit field.
Next, we will see about month input type. The month input field allows the user to select a month and a year. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, in the body tag, let's add form tag. Inside the form tag, let's add label element with the content. Select your birth month. To the label tag, I'm adding for attribute with the value birth month. Next, we will add input tag with the value month for the type attribute. Then add ID attribute with the value birth month and the name attribute with the value birth month. Let's save the file. See, in the browser, we can select any month.
Next, we will see about number input type. The number input field defines the numeric input field. We can use attributes to set restriction on what numbers are accepted. Let's see this in action.
First, we will create number type input field. For that, let's add form tag. And inside form tag, let's create a label element with the content. Select the order quantity. Let's give the value quantity for the for attribute. Next, we will create input tag with type equal to number, and for ID attribute, please provide the value as quantity And for name attribute, I'm giving value as quantity. So in this number input field, we can provide any number value as the input, and we can increment or decrement those value by using the up and down arrows. Now we will see how to use min and max attributes with the number input field. Let's add form tag, and in between the opening and closing tags, I'm creating label element with the content. Select the order quantity between 5 and 10. Let's add break element at the end. To the label tag, let's add for attribute with the value quantity. Now we will add input tag. Now we will add input tag with the value number for the type attribute, and also give id equal to quantity and name equal to quantity. Let's add min attribute with the value 5 and the max attribute with the value 10. Then add break element at the end and save the file. I'm clicking the up arrow and the displaying number is 5, which is the minimum value. When you keep on incrementing, you will get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and the value will not get incremented beyond 10, which is the maximum value.
Next, we will see about range input type. The range input type is used to define the control for entering number whose exact value is not important, which is like a slider control. The default range is 0 to 100. We can also use attributes to set restriction on what numbers are accepted. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, we will create range input field. For that, let's add form tag. Inside form tag, let's add label tag with the content. Select the order, quantity between 0 and 10. Let's add for attribute with the value quantity. Now I am creating input field. In the input tag, I am adding type attribute with the value range. Then I am adding id equal to quantity and name equal to quantity. Then I am adding minimum value as 5 and maximum value as 10. Now save the file and see the range input type is added in the form. Now we can adjust the slider to select values.
Next, we will see about search input type. The search input type is used for the search input fields. Let's see this in action.
We will create search type input field. For that, first I am adding form tag. Inside form tag, let's create label element with the content search, and I am adding for attribute with the value gsearch. Next I am adding input tag with type equal to search and id equal to gsearch and name equal to gsearch. Let's save the file and see how it displays in the browser. This is how we have to create search type input field in HTML forms.
Next, we will see tell input type. The tell input type is used for the input fields that should contain a telephone number. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, first let's add form tag. Inside form tags, let's create label element with the content. Enter your phone number and I'm giving for attribute with the value phone number. Next I'm adding input tag and then I'm adding type attribute with the value tel and id equal to phone num and name equal to phone num. And also I'm adding pattern attribute. For value I'm typing square bracket and inside the square bracket I'm giving 0 to 9. That means we can enter any values from 0 to 9 and that curly braces and inside that 2. Then hyphen and again square bracket inside that 0 to 9. Then curly brackets inside that 3. Then again hyphen and square bracket with 0 to 9 and curly bracket with 2 and again hyphen and then square bracket with 0 to 9 and curly bracket with 3. This is how we have to add value for pattern attribute. We can enter values in this field.
Next, we will see about time input type. The time input type allows the user to select a time with no time zone. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, inside the body tag, let's add form tag. And inside form tag, I'm creating label element with the content. Select the birth time. I'm adding for attribute with the value birth time. Let's add input tag. For type attribute, I'm giving value as time. And for id attribute, I'm giving value as birth time. And for name attribute, I'm giving value as birth time. See how it displays in the browser. Here we can select any time we want. This is how we have to create time type input field in the HTML forms.
Next, we will see about URL input type. The URL input type is used for the input fields that should contain a URL address. Based on the browser support, the URL field will be automatically validated when submitted. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, let's create the URL type input field. For that I have added form tag and inside the form tag I am creating label element with the content enter your home page address. Let's add for attribute with the value home page. I am adding break element at the end. After that I am adding input tag. Let's add type attribute with the value URL and id attribute with the value home page and also name attribute with the value home page. See the output in the browser. This is how we have to create URL type input file in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about weak input type. The weak input type allows the user to select a week and year. Let's see this in action.
To create weak type input field, first let's add font tag in the body tag. First, let's create label element with the content. Select your working week. Since this is defined for selecting working week, I am adding for attribute with the value work week. Let's add break element at the end. Let's create input element. For type attribute, I'm giving week as the value. For ID attribute, I'm giving work week. And also for the name attribute, I'm giving work week. Let's see the output in the browser. In this, user can select the week number and the weekdays. This is how we have to create week type input field in HTML forms.
Till now, we have seen what all the input types available. Now we will focus on different attributes of the HTML input element. First, we will start with value attribute. The value attribute is used to specify an initial value for the input field. Let's see this in action.
Now we will see how to use the value attribute. Let's copy and paste the same code we have written before with first name and last name. Let's save the file. In the browser, we can enter values for both first name and last name. I'm giving Spider Tech Hub for first name. If we want to load the form with initial value, we can use value attribute. For first name, I'm creating value attribute with the value Peter, and for last name, I'm giving value attribute with the value max10. Let's save the file. This is the use of value attribute in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about read-only attribute. The read-only attribute specifies that an input field is read-only. The read-only input field cannot be modified. The value of the read-only input field will be sent when submitting the form. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, I'm copy pasting the same code we have written with first name and last name. Let's save the file. For first name, I'm giving Jack instead of Peter. For last name, I'm giving Maxton Kim instead of Maxton. So we can alter the default values. Now I'm adding the read-only attribute to the first name. Let's save the file. Now you can see I'm not able to change the value for the first name. We can change the value for the last name.
Next, we will see about disabled attribute. The disabled attribute specifies that an input field should be disabled. Usually, a disabled input field is unusable and unclickable. The value of the disabled input field will not be sent when submitting the form. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I'm using the same code. Now I'm adding disabled attribute for the first name. Let's save the file. See in the browser, you can see the first name input field is disabled.
Next, we will see about size attribute. The size attribute is used to specify the visible width of an input field. The default value is 20. The size attribute will work on the following input types, which are text, search, tell, URL, email, and password. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, let's copy and paste the same code. For the first name input field, I'm adding size attribute with the value 3. See, the size of the input field is changed. This is how we have to use size attribute in HTML forms.
Next, we will see about max length attribute. The max length attribute is used to specify the maximum number of characters allowed in an input field. For example, when the max length is set, the input field will not accept more than the specified number of characters. Let's see this in action.
In this HTML file, let's copy and paste the same form code with first name and last name. In the browser, for the first name, I'm entering Spider Tech Hub. And for last name, I'm giving channel. Now I can enter any number of characters for both first name and last name. Now let's add max length attribute with the value 4 for the first name input field. See in the browser, now I am able to enter text with only 4 characters. This is the use of max length attribute.
Next we will see about min and max attributes. The min and max attributes are used to specify the minimum and maximum values for an input field. The min and max attributes will work on the input types, and those are number, range, date, datetime local, month, time, and week. We can use both min and max attributes together to create a range of legal values. Let's see this in action.
We have already seen the working of min and max attributes while dealing with date type input field. Let's go back to the part and learn the min and max attributes.
Next we will see about multiple attribute. The multiple attribute specifies that the user is allowed to enter more than one value in an input field. The multiple attributes work with the following input types, and those are email and file. Let's see this in action.
For code demo, in this HTML file, let's copy and paste the same code we have written for file type input field. See the file browse is added here. Now I am browsing and adding document 1 from the system. Now I am able to select only one file. To select multiple files, let's add multiple attribute to the input tag. Let's save the file. Now you see, you can select 2 or more files. This is the use of multiple attribute.
Next we will see about pattern attribute. The pattern attribute specifies a regular expression that the input field value is checked against when the form is submitted. The pattern attribute works with the input types text, date, search, URL, tell, email, and password. Let's see this in action.
We have already seen the use of pattern attribute while seeing the demo of tell type input field. Please go back to that part and learn the code.
Next we will see about placeholder attribute. The placeholder attribute is used to specify a short hint that describes the expected value of an input field. That means it is a sample value or a short description of the expected format. It is used to display a short hint in an input field before the user enters a value. The placeholder attributes will work on the input types text, search, URL, tell, email, and password. Let's see this in action.
For demo, in this HTML file, I am copy pasting the same code we have written for tell type input field. Let's see how the placeholder attribute will work. To the input tag, I am adding placeholder attribute. I am giving value as 12-345 -67 -890. Let's save the file. See the placeholder value is displayed lightly in the input field. This is how we have to use placeholder attribute in HTML forms.
Next we will see about the required attribute. The required attribute specifies that the input field must be filled out before submitting the form. The required attributes will work on the input types text, search, URL, tell, email, password, date pickers, number, checkbox, radio, and file. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am copy pasting the same HTML code with first name and last name. Let's add record attribute to the first name input field. That means the first name should be mandatorily given in the form. This is how we have to use required attribute in HTML forms.
Next we will see about step attribute. The step attribute is used to specify the legal number intervals for an input field. This attribute can be used together with the max and min attributes to create a range of legal values. This step attribute will work on the input types, number, range, date, daytime local, month, time, and week. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am copy pasting the same form code we have written for number type input field. Let's change the maximum value as 50 instead of 10. So, when you increment the value using up arrow, the value is getting incremented in terms of 1. Now I am adding step attribute with the value 5. Let's save the file. Now when you increment using up arrow, the value will be incremented in terms of 5.
Next we will see about autofocus attribute. The autofocus attribute specifies that an input field should be automatically get focus when the page loads. Let's see this in action.
For demo, I am copy pasting the same code with first name and last name. To add autofocus attribute, we need to just type autofocus in the input field. The first name input field will be automatically get focused when the form is getting loaded. This is how we have to use autofocus attribute in HTML forms.
Next we will see about the height and width attributes. The height attribute is used to specify the height of the input image element. And the width attribute is used to specify the width of the input image element. Let's see this in action.
We have already seen about height and width attributes while dealing with image type input field. Please go back to that part and learn coding.
Next we will see about list attribute. The list attribute refers to the data list element that contains predefined options for an input element. Let's see this in action.
We have already seen how to use the list attribute while working with data list element. Please go back to that part and learn this.
Next we will see about the autocomplete attribute. The autocomplete attribute specifies whether a form or an input field should have autocomplete on or off. This attribute allows the user to predict the value. When the user starts to type in a field, the browser should display options to fill in the field. Let's see this in action.
We have already seen how to use the autocomplete attribute while working with HTML forms. Please go back to that part and learn this part.
If you found this video helpful, please like, share and comment this video. If you want to stay up to date with our latest content, please subscribe to my channel, Spider Tech Hub. Thank you.